Right, this is the worst situation to be in a garage, I think. We have an insignia, so I'm sure you can guess what's wrong. Diesel insignia. And I'm sure you can even see from this that this isn't even the original engine. But listen to this now. Hopefully you can hear it from here. Oh. Oh no. Yep. Engine seized. Right, so the engine is seized. This engine was put in, I don't know how long ago, seriously not long ago. It's done about 200 miles. I think it was put in within the last week. I'm not sure, I didn't do the job. It's done not even 200 miles, engine seized. Scrapyard told the garage to go fuck themselves. They're not covering the engine. They said it was working perfectly when it left their place. And they're like, seriously, it's not even done 200 miles, not even a week. The guy that bought the engine from them has been dealing with this scrapyard for years and years and years. They're not a cheap engine, and the scrapyard, like I said, told them to go fuck off. Which, in my opinion, is wrong. The problem is, the customer is now screaming because the customer paid for the job. The engine is gone. I understand the customer's point of view. The garage that did it is out an engine. The scrapyard should have covered it, so I understand the garage frustration. I also understand the scrapyard's frustration. I understand everything. But at the end of the day, the customer is the one that's out of vehicle. The scrapyard is not going to cover it. So the garage now has to get a brand new engine, do everything for free. Everything for free, which is wrong. It's not the customer's fault. It's not the garage fault. And you could technically say it's not really the scrapyard's fault, but the scrapyard just stand over it. What the scrapyard should have done is, if he didn't give him an engine, in my opinion, he should have said, right, I'll give you the equivalent of what you pay for this engine in parts. Because the guy wasn't asking for money from the scrapyard, he just wanted a new engine. And they said no, so they should have said, look, we'll give you the equivalent in parts, you know, like a credit note. So, you know, we're not going to cover the engine, but we'll give you the credit note in parts, which would still be great because at least then, you know, if he needs turbos or DPFs or whatever, injectors for whatever other cars, he can take that off his bill. But they said no. So he's now trying to get another engine. So what we have to do is we have to take this engine out. It's just been an absolute nightmare for the garage owner. So put down in the comments what you think is right. Who is in the wrong? What should someone have done? What should someone have covered? Because I know in America, now I could be wrong, but in America you go to a motor factors, and the part comes wrong, they even cover the half the labour of what it is. That just doesn't happen here. I've never had a part from anywhere brand new where I've had parts that failed, but you won't get paid for putting that part back in from you know, a main dealer, from a motor factors. It just doesn't happen here. When I heard that in America a few years ago, I was like, wow, you know, at least you get something. We don't get anything here. We have to do it all for gratis. Anyway, let's get stripping. Right, I'm debating what to do, which way to do it, which is going to be the easiest, which is best. To take off the wiring loom first, leave it to the side, or just essentially disconnect it from ECUs and disconnect it from down there, leave the wiring loom on the engine, and then once it's out the car, once we're swapping everything around, swap everything around, because it's not too bad the bits on the top, but some of the bits further down and, you know, down in here, it's just a little bit more awkward in the car. Once the engine is out, it tends to be a little bit easier. So I'm not sure exactly what to do yet, but one thing that I'm going to do first is take out the airbox, take out all the batteries and stuff, disconnect this. Right, got interrupted. So I'm going to disconnect the heater matrix pipes. Then things have to be disconnected regardless what I'm doing here. Disconnect the water pipes for the radiator. Again, they have to be disconnected regardless. Power steering pipes, just stuff like that. And then hopefully should be enough room to suck the engine out the top. So we'll just see what the story is. If the wires are fairly easy to disconnect down here, I'll just disconnect everything from the ECU. This is for the heater plugs, everything, and just like lay it on top of the engine and whip the engine out with the wiring loom. If it's not easy to get into all these, because this is a clip here, ECU's a clip, that's simple enough, but there's a load of wires mostly going into the fuse box, and depending on how they are, if they're underneath the fuse box, it's just not worth the hassle. So I'll have to see once I kind of get a little bit further. Right, so we've got air conditioning pipe we have to disconnect, our power steering pipe, our high pressure line is there, and our feed pipe is there. We have to disconnect that too. Radiator pipes, can't quite see them at the minute, but they're down there somewhere. Intake pipe, rear heater matrix. I'm not filming all this, even doing a time lapse, you know, especially if you're doing the heater matrix and all this thing down here, you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. So it's kind of pointless doing a time lapse. I'll just kind of do a time lapse for bits you can kind of see. So let me disconnect all the bits you can't kind of see and then show you the bits you can kind of see. And if you're trying to do this and you can't see, you'll see when you're doing it and not when I'm doing it. Yeah. Right, what you want to do is you want to cable tie everything out the way as much as you can, because you don't want the pipes flopping, because that can get caught and it can break things and it can do all sorts of damage. So anything you take off, you know, now this stays part of the engine, but this doesn't, so I can cable tie this out the way. I've taken off another couple of pipes. I've noticed that one of the AC pipes has all been cut, look. So, yeah, at least I don't have to worry about taking that off. What I'm going to do now is just start disconnecting things. I've also noticed that's got broken as well. It's been repaired, so yeah. But I'm just going to start disconnecting things now and getting things out of the way. Right, I've got a lot off, as much as I can really show. All down here, all the clips are broke. Get a torch. All the clips are broke. They're all twisted in together. It's a bit of a nightmare. There's a couple of wires all the way down here on the gearbox somewhere. Look, I have to get off. All the rest are just kind of awkward. There's a couple of them that are kind of, you know, easy to get. The rest are just awkward. I'm not going to be able to show you. So I've got to deal with awkward wires, and all the clips are broken. And every single one of these wires have a safety clip on them before you can undo them, which is crazy. You can even see remnants of the old safety clips all inside there as well. So yeah, the joys. Right, we're underneath now. Disconnect the exhaust, 3 bolts there. Disconnect the sensor for the air conditioning. There's a couple more sensors up there which I can't see, which I was hoping I could. And coming down to the back, we've got our oil sensor here, and we've got alternators, starter motors, and a couple more wires up there, which is fairly easy to get to from the bottom. So it's really now just, it's either 1 or 2 just above the AC unit, which I can't quite see from the top or the bottom, unfortunately. Then what we're going to do is, I won't film it, but take off the 2 bottom mounts that will allow the engine to swing. Then the only thing that's holding it in is the gearbox mount, the engine mount, and the drive shafts, essentially. But there's always one you forget. Always one. Or in my case, 2 or 3. But Yeah, so I'll just whip off these first. Yeah. Now, these are the wires you couldn't see from down in the alternator. So, them wires, that wire, and these were the wires down in below the AC unit. So they should all be disconnected now. I did notice I haven't disconnected the main power wire going to the alternator and the starter motor, because it appears to be this one. And if I disconnect it from here, I can leave it with the vehicle, but there also appears to be an earth on it somewhere. So I'm going to look for an earth. But if not, oh, there's the earth, sorry, there, right there. So right there, and if I disconnect that, I can leave that with the car, or you can just disconnect it from the alternator and the starter motor and bring it back here. Look, it's up to yourself. If that earth looks a bit dodgy down there, maybe leave it and disconnect it from there. I'm going to see which is going to be easier. I think it's kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen other, to be honest. It doesn't really seem to be any easier way. So I'll decide what I'm going to do. But basically, I think that's it all disconnected. So the only thing that's really holding it is all the engine mounts, the 4 engine mounts, essentially, and the drive shafts. I think I have everything else disconnected. No, there has to be one more radiator pipe I haven't, and the intake that I haven't disconnected yet. I've only disconnected one radiator pipe, so there has to be another one somewhere, and then the intake. So yeah, but we're getting there. That's all the wiring there. If they just had a multi-plug there, that's all. You could disconnect the ECU, disconnect it from here, disconnect it for the heater plugs, and you can leave all the wiring loom on there. Take the engine out, put the wiring loom on the new engine. So much easier and quicker. And all it takes is a multi-plug there. Like, seriously, it's not difficult. Right, we're getting there. All the wires are off, as you already know. Found the water pipe here. Got to disconnect the clutch. Got to disconnect the power steering line. Disconnect the gear linkages. And then I do truly think that's essentially everything. Most probably isn't, but we'll see. But I think so. And a lot of people are hard on these engines because, you know, they do blow up. But it's only a very, very small minor thing that actually happens to them with the oil pump seals. If they were replaced, then this wouldn't be an issue, essentially. So now I know you don't necessarily have to do it in every car you've ever owned, but if you do it before 100,000 miles in these, they won't seize like this. But they've also got these stupid £1,000 sensing glow plugs in them if you buy 4 of them in Ireland, more or less €1,000. It's ridiculous. But to be fair, you know, apart from the little oil seal, which no one ever says and everyone just says the engines are shit, they're not too bad, really, in relative terms. But I know I'm going to get people, because even if I shit on these engines, I'm going to get people saying, no, you're wrong. And when I defend them, I'm going to get people saying, no, I'm wrong. So look, I can't win. But yeah, so just think that's also the bleed nipple for the radiator, if you're wondering. So that's handy to know where that is. So yeah, gear linkages, clutch, power steering pipe. I think there's another power steering. Yeah, there's another power steering pipe there I've got to disconnect. And then I do think that's it as regards, you know, bits that are holding the engine. I'm going to mostly take off the bonnet and lift the engine and gearbox out. I could maybe leave the bonnet on there, but it just gives me a little bit more room if I have the bonnet off. And it's only 4 bolts and 1 clip, it's no big deal. So yeah, let me crack on. Right, a couple of tools that are really, really handy, not just for this car, but for basically any car that uses these type of clips. You got the special pliers with the grooves in, so when you squeeze them together it doesn't slip out. These are from Welch Workzug. They're in Scotland, I believe, in the UK. Tell them I sent you, they'll look after you. These are really, really handy too. They're essentially the same, but they've got this long metal wire on it, and you can get into really, really awkward places. You just can't get the the pliers into, and as you squeeze on the actual unit itself, it comes together, but it also locks and it keeps it in that position. So you have to squeeze and unlock it. So they're really, really handy. Stay away from the really cheap ones of these, because they just don't, the last few clicks, they don't grip very well and they're just crap. So, you know, spend a few quid more and get the proper ones. But you will, with both of them tools, believe me, you will love it, because they are just like that pipe down there, which is this one in here. Just push that, bang, done, boom, bush, done. Simples. I can't get that in and try and do it any other way. You just, a lot of swearing goes on. So there was no swearing with that one. There was swearing other things, but there was no swearing with that one. So I've got the power steering disconnected, both pipes, the high pressure and the feed going into it. So what's left? Gearbox related things and this power steering pipe here, the return. So yeah, that's what I got left. Right, I disconnected it. It's actually, it is the return, but technically it goes through the cooler first before it goes back into the bottle. And I know if I don't say that, someone's going to say, well, actually, that's for the cooler. It's not for the return. Where technically it still is the return, because it goes through the cooler and comes back to the bottle. So it has to go through that pipe. And if you was just about to type that, you're the problem with YouTube. You're the arsehole out there thinking you are clever, writing a comment behind your keyboard and not listening to the rest of the video. Because the amount of people that I said, oh, you done this wrong, or you didn't do that, blah, blah. And then, this is not just me, it's loads of people. And then the next second, they tell you what you've just written down because you haven't watched the video. You're trying to be clever. Yeah, you're the arsehole. But anyway, there's plenty of arseholes out there hiding behind your keyboards. So, what's left? Gear linkages and clutch. I think. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. These are really easy to remove. You get a big sort of lever bar or big screwdriver, just push it in there and twist it. Get it there and twist it, and they just lift up nice and handy. What I always do is, well, say always, mainly, is I disconnect. I don't disconnect these from the actual bracket, because these can be brittle, these can break, and sometimes they're really difficult to disconnect. And this particular one, you have to push this to back and lift it up, but not all of them are that easy. Some of them are really difficult, and like I said, you end up breaking them. So I just unbolt the bracket from the gearbox. That way you cannot break the actual linkages themselves, and you just rebolt it on. I just find it easier than trying to undo it any other way. Just unbelievable, isn't it? I have literally in years haven't disconnected them like that, because they've just never come off. They came off really easy, just pulled the little tab back and they lifted straight up. But I still think, really funny, that that bracket's going to get in my way, so I'm going to have to take the bracket off. But anyway, they've come off, got everything else off. So I'm going to lift it up now and remove the two middle engine mounts, or the two pendulum mounts. And then all that leaves is drive shafts and the two, the gearbox mount and the engine mount, theoretically. I think. Kind of, maybe. We'll see. But everything else is disconnected around there. Everything else is cable tied that I can, and wedged in other places, just so it doesn't flick back and just, you know, get caught on the engine and stuff like that. I left that lead on, so I disconnected the earth and the power from this side. So I left that on the car, and yeah, we'll see. Right, the rear engine mount, or the rear middle mount, and the front mount. So this goes to the back of the engine, this goes to the front. They're both in the middle of the engine. So they're both off now, and they're all 18mm nuts and bolts. All bolts on this side, big bolt that goes through there with counterweight on it, nut and bolt here, and 3 18mm there. So nice and easy. That's where the front one goes. And that's where the rear one goes. Now, all we got to do is drive shafts, and, well, that's essentially it. I think the only thing really holding this engine in to stop it from going up is the drive shafts. After we take the two drive shafts out, we should be able to take the two engine mounts off and lift it forward. But what I am going to have to do is drain the fluid. Now, This fluid is literally only done like not even 200 miles. So I'm trying to save the garage as much money as I can by, you know, this is brand new gearbox oil and stuff like that. Yeah, so obviously not engine oil, but trying to save as many fluids as I can just to save him a few quid, because he has to unfortunately eat all this, which is unfair. Is that gonna come off now? Gonna move the engine enough to get that off. Kind of, there we go. Now that exhaust is off, so yeah. Right, what we've got left is take off the two wheels. I've drained the oil from the gearbox, and as far as I can see, it's just the two engine mounts holding this on, or the gearbox mount and the engine mount. And I truly do think that is everything, but there's always one thing. So what I'm going to do is take off both the wheels, disconnect one, so you can't really see because there's no light, but anyway, once I take off the wheels, disconnect the shocks so I can slide the drive shafts out of the way. Don't necessarily have to take out this one all the way. We have to take it out from, again, you can't see, let me get some light on. But anyway, I'll show you once I get them, once I get more light on, and we will get this engine out and disconnect from the gearbox. And then what we have to do is put the new engine in. But I might show you taking out this one and showing you exactly what goes in them. It's a very, very small seal that goes in them and causes all this grief. Right, we're going to have to take the drive shafts completely out. You can see we've got 3 bolts here because this goes through the engine, so we obviously need that out. And also these are not normally too bad. If you're taking the gearbox out, you can just push them to the side, but not when they go through the engine like that. So we're going to have to take that one out as well as the other one. Again, it's just going to make it easier for when we're putting it back in. So we've got 3 13mm bolts there. Again, I'm not going to be able to film that doing it because it's just, there's just no room. We've got 2 18mm nuts and bolts here, and that will allow the hub to come away from the suspension, which will allow the drive shaft to come out of the gearbox. And that looks like a 32mm, if I'm not mistaken. Could be a 36. Nope, 32. 32mm nut there, and then that will allow the drive shaft to come out. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then we are good to go. But again, not going to be able to film any of it, but you'll see it as you're doing it yourself. Okay, that's one drive shaft out. These were the bolts. You can see where the actual bracket was, and I'm not saying you can't disconnect it there, but look, it's just easier to get the whole thing out because it goes through that bracket there, which is bolted onto the engine. Yes, you can unbolt that bracket as well. Even if you do that, but it's still going to kind of be, it's not so much in the way when you're taking the engine out, it's more when you're putting it back in. It's just, look, just get it out. Taking off them 2 bolts there, put a cable tie in there just to hold it so it doesn't put any tension anywhere. Once it's in now, what you can actually do is just put a couple of the bolts back just to hold it in there, because that cable tie could snap. It was just as I was taking it out. So I'm going to do the same on the other side, and this engine then it's ready to come out. I tell you, this table that cost me 25 grand is grand, literally. I mean, look, it holds anything. Brilliant. Right, all joking aside, we have the bonnet off now. We have the 2 drive shafts out. So theoretically, we should be able to lift this engine and gearbox out. I think I'm going to be okay just undoing these 3 bolts for this engine mount, because you can see we've got 3 or 4 inches to move it across there. We don't really need anything to move. Oh, actually, no, hold on. Ooh, no, we might just have to twist the engine. Didn't see that bracket there. That's annoying. So we might just have to twist the engine kind of that way. So what I'm going to do is, just to make it easier, I will remove this mount on here as well. But I'll do all that once it's on the engine crane. And then we're going to have to definitely take this off. 2 of the bolts are awkward to get to. So what I'm going to have to do is undo this, drop the gearbox down to allow me to get the 2 bottom bolts, and then I can take this out, because this thing sticking out is going to definitely be in the way. Once that's out, we should be able to kind of twist the engine that way and lift it up, I'm hoping. Time will tell, but I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to give it a go anyway. Okay, so I put everything in the back of the car with all its nuts and bolts just because it's easier. So these are all the engine mounts, and all the nuts and bolts or whatever happens to be with it is with it. So at least you know where it goes, where the bolts go, and you're not, you haven't got hundreds of bolts left and you're all confused. And it's just nice and easy and neat. Right, we have the engine kind of, well, it's just really supported. It's not really out. I had to unbolt the ABS pump just to kind of give it a little bit of movement because it was kind of in the way. I could have maybe got it past, but there's no point just trying to force it. So I've angled the engine down. So as you're looking at it, I've angled it that way. So hopefully we can clear the ABS pump. And you can see this side now. So hopefully we can just keep jacking it up, lift it over, and we're good to go. Fingers crossed. Unbolting the ABS pump was definitely the way to go. So I need to get some timbers now so I can actually rest this on the engine crane itself, so it's not just floating there. But yes, definitely moving that, or not moving, but just loosening the bolts was definitely the key. Oh, I never took that off, or maybe did, and it's falling off a pipe. I'll have to remember that. Could cause me problems if I forget it. There we go. Right, you remember how I said at the beginning of the video, it's easier to disconnect all the wires rather than trying to disconnect all this? Actually, I don't think it is. So I'm going to show you, because I've had to take an engine out of another car to repair this one, and I said I would do it slightly differently. Because we don't care about the other car, it's a donor car, I just went around it slightly differently, and I think, depending on your circumstances, this might be easier. Right, so what I did is, there's 3 10mm bolts in the fuse box just there. I screwed them off and it separates, half the fuse box stays there and half it comes away. I thought it was slightly different setup, so you'd have to go into all these wires. That's why I didn't, but actually no. So I disconnected that, disconnected everything else I normally did, and all the wiring, the fuse box, ECU and everything is now there. The only thing I had to undo was one extra earth, which was here. We had to undo this earth there, but we had to do that in the other one. And I just disconnected this from the battery because it was just easier to take the battery out. But apart from the couple of the solenoids here and stuff, that is the wiring loom complete with the car. And some of these clips are really, really awkward. That's going to save a good few hours. Now, again, it depends on your car. If things are rusty, if things don't come off easy. This isn't the same wiring loom as the other car, so I'm going to have to, if I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to have to take the wiring loom off the other car, because this has got the sensing glow plugs on where the other car hasn't, so it's slightly different wiring loom. But so the fuse box and everything's going to be different. Obviously the ECU and everything's going to be different, but I'm really considering now disconnecting the fuse box and putting the wiring loom on the car before I drop it in. I'm seriously considering it, because some of the wires down there at the back were awkward, some of the wires down here were awkward. It was just awkward. So, depending on your circumstances, I think that might be the way to go. Right, this is the first time I've ever had an engine where it's been taken out properly. I've taken this engine out, so I haven't cut anything, well, apart from that. But as regards all the wiring, all the pipes, everything's not cut, and there's a lot of stuff I can use. Like, I don't have to now change over starter motors. I am going to change over the DPF, because I could smell the DPF in this car and it was coming up as a fault, and we know the DPF in this one wasn't. I'm not sure about the timing belt and things yet. I don't know what the garage wants me to do because this is nothing to do with me. Gearbox and clutch in this car is absolutely perfect. I know the woman who originally had the car, I think, that's the helicopter, put second-hand clutches and stuff because she didn't want to buy new, which was just, yeah. And I think the flywheel's making a noise on this one, but he's been driving this one and it's absolutely perfect. So I think we can leave, again, I'm going to have a word with him, but I think we can leave gearboxes, clutches, everything in place because it's all the same. So DPF, obviously wiring has to come out because this has slightly different wiring. This has different heater plugs and stuff on. But what I think I am going to do is disconnect the wiring from the car and actually bolt it all to this engine here. So, you know, it's a lot easier for me. So like all the wires are down in here. It's very, very difficult to do it when it's in the car. Yeah, I did cut that one just because we wasn't saving it anyway, and I didn't cut it on the one I took out. So, but things like alternators, all that sort of stuff, I don't have to change over because, well, we know it's working. Unless the garage wants it. Obviously, I have to have a word with the garage. But both the engines are up on here now to make it a lot easier for me to work on. Right, as you can see, this is our engine we're putting in. This is the old timing belt, and this is our engine we are swapping the timing belt. I can't wait to hear the comments. Well, you should be putting a new belt in it. This belt's not even 200 miles old. So if you was gonna comment that means you didn't watch the first part of the video, and it means you're a tit. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to take off the front cover here, 5mm Allen key all around here. Then we've got take off the fan belt, which is a 15mm to loosen the tensioner. Then we got some 15mm bolts here, and we got a couple of 13mm bolts under here, but we have to take off the pulley first, which is a T50. So I'm going to do all that off camera exactly the same way as I've done it here. No point me showing it because it is just literally undoing bolts, and then we'll transfer everything over. Okay, what I've done is I've marked it up to the marks because it just makes your life easier. Not going to lock this. There's no point using any tools. You can do, but you really just don't need to. So the bottom mark, 9 o'clock. And I also mark it just 2 times inside because sometimes, you know, these marks are a bit far away and you might not be able to recognize them properly. Again, I've marked it 3 times in there, but you only really need to do 2. I've marked it 2 times in there. I've also marked it in the proper timing marks, drawn a line and put a mark on the case. Same here, because on the timing belt, wherever the timing belt's gone, I've just remarked it with Tipp-Ex just to make it a bit clearer. There is 3 timing mark belts on the timing belt. I've put Tipp-Ex on that to make it a bit clearer. They will line up with these 3 timing marks, and then once I know, because there's a white marking, it'll line up with the case mark, so I know I'm fine. It just makes your life a lot safer and a lot easier. Because if anything does move, you're going to have all the original marks back in the place. Like I said, it's difficult to line up these marks, but it's a lot easier to line up the marks inside. That's why I do it that way. And it's all good. We can now loosen the tensioner, and I'll show you the way to put these tensioners back on the proper way. What I'm going to do next is just release the tensioner, and I'm going to take out the water pump, and I'm going to put all that back. Unfortunately, the water pump has been all sealed. Look at that, just an absolute mess. If it's got a gasket, don't seal it. Just don't. See all the sealer around the stud. I took it out this one. Look at all the sealer inside the threads. Look at that. Just don't do it. Look at all the sealer in the threads. Look. Just don't do it. Simple. If it's got a gasket, let the gasket do the work. Right, this is a 12mm. It's only supposed to be about 25 Newton meters, I think. These are not very tight. But Jesus Christ, this one is. Ugh. You can see the tensioner at the back of this. There's like a captive nut which slides, which I'll show you in a second. That's how we tension it. So you can see the back here, we got a bolt or a nut, sorry, that slides up and down like that. Hopefully you can see that. And that's where we actually tension, well, that's how we tension it. So we can now take off this. I'm putting all the old stuff back. Well, not old stuff, it's apparently only done about 200 odd miles, if that. So that's what I'm actually doing. That's what I've been told to do. Like I said, I'm doing this for another garage, so just doing as I'm told to do. I'm going to take off the water pump now. They are Allen keys, bigger than that one. What size is that? 8 mils. But what I got to do is I have to, which I don't want to do, but I have no choice this time. Oh, bugger. I have to reseal the one because of the way it's been done before. I would never normally do that. Jesus. I would never normally do it that way. But unfortunately I have to. Ooh. Ooh. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Did threads come out of there? Oh no. They did. Whoever put that in. Unbelievable. See if I can show you. I can see it there. I need to get this out. There's all metal flakes come out there. I don't know if the threads are now damaging this water pump. There is Loctite on these, and they're supposed to be Loctite on them, but it's causing damage. The other one on the old engine didn't feel like this. Bolts came out. Same thing. Hopefully it's just maybe the Loctite. It's not the threads. Okay, I've got good quality Allen keys because that would have normally broke, but that's just really glad he hurt me. Oh, I don't like the feel of these at all. I don't know. Don't know. Why put so much Loctite on them? Now they do come with Loctite, but that just seems to be. I don't know if it's an original belt on this. I don't think it is, but still, it shouldn't have been 22 mil. I remember. It shouldn't have been that much Loctite on it. Again, the idler we're going to change. No Loctite on that. What we do need to do is we need to find a bolt. You get it in the kit of the time belt, but because I don't have the kit in this case, we need to screw a bolt into this bottom channel here, and then when we screw the tensioner on, make sure you get the tensioner lined up inside that little nipple. Oh, he said nipple. Once that's in place, then what you do is with a screwdriver, you do this. I might do it slightly different because I'm outside, but essentially with a screwdriver, you can lever against this bolt, push it on this bottom plate here, and you can adjust the tensioner that way. That's the way it's designed. So inside the car, this is what you're leaning against. So you put your screwdriver in here, and as you push your screwdriver up, this slides up on the little nipple sticking out, which then in turn, this little arrow will come into the middle there. Do it without my fingers getting in the way. The little arrow will come into the middle. Once the arrow is in the middle, you know your timing tension is correct. But what I've got to do now is I'm just going to do it off camera, is clean all this up, clean all these threads out. Hopefully there is no damage done inside them threads. Put the new water pump on, but like I said, it's all been sealed, so I'm going to have to kind of seal all that back up. And then I'll be ready to do the time belt, and I'll turn the camera back on. Alright, hopefully that's enough so you can see. I'll move the camera, especially when I'm coming to tighten the tensioner, but you're going to get an idea. It can be a bit tricky to get the belt on. Click, click. So I hope you can see a bit better on the new one. This here, this has to be in the middle here, and that's what we lever against with the screwdriver. I can most probably get something in here and lever it against it, but when you're in the car, you have to put the bolt in here and lever with the screwdriver kind of in there like that and twist it up with the screwdriver, if that makes sense. You'll see now in a second. Need to get that in, not too tight, but just kind of tight so we can still move it. It's 12mm. Still movable, no. Yep, there we go. Now I put the belt on, you can see the marks that I've put there, so we'll try and get them. Hopefully I put them in the right spot. Soon find out, did I? Oh, there's also arrows on this one, so this has to go clockwise. Some belts have arrows on, some belts don't. I don't know if I've got the marks in the right place, but anyway, I know the timing hasn't moved, so even if it's not in exactly the right place, we won't worry about that yet. Put the bottom one on first with the mark on the right place. Close to it anyway. There we go. Doesn't like we're lining up with our mark here. Oh, here we are. Yes, we are. We are lining up with our mark. And we are lining up with our mark on the top. Good stuff. Good stuff. We need the slack to be on this side, not this side here. See that we've got too much slack there, that's no good for us. We want this to be our slack side. It might be a bit of swearing, a little bit of swearing to get the belt on. I'm going to have to kind of stand in front of the camera, so let me just get the belt on first and then I'll show you once we get it on the tightening procedure. Right, I've got this belt on and I just thought to myself, because there's someone else here, the floor cleaner is here, we can, or the floor sweeper upper, we can film it so you can actually see, because it is easy once you kind of know the little trick. Now, I'm going to take it off, which you can bet your life now I've turned the camera on, this is going to be a nightmare to get off. So what I'm going to do first is, I'm going to line up my bottom mark, just because it's got it on here, with my bottom mark on the bottom pulley, which is there. I got this on in seconds before, but you can bet your life now this isn't going to go on nowhere near as easy. Then I'm just going to hook this around the pump so it doesn't slip for the minute. Because this side here is the important side that I need. I knew this was happening. This is the important side that I need to keep the tension on this side. Because this side needs to be tensioned all the time. Line it up with my mark. That's now tensioned. Keep that mark on there. I'll show you the marks close up in a second. Put it on top, bring it down. There we go. That now is on. This is taut, this is loose, which it needs to be because this is our tension side. And more importantly, all the marks line up. Now I did screw this little M8 bolt into there because this was turning quite easy. So I'll show you all the marks now and then we can tension it. So our bottom mark is on here, you can't quite see, but then we come up, this hasn't moved. We come up to here, our original mark is lining up here, which is good. We come up across the top and our mark is lining up here. We also haven't moved our marks in here. We haven't moved our marks in here, and we haven't moved our marks down there. So that is now, to all intents and purposes, it's on. It's not tight, it's not tensioned, but it's on. So now we're going to tension it properly. I'm going to remove that bolt first. Right, so I've showed you all the marks. I don't know why I said I'm going to take that out. I'm going to leave that in for the minute. But what I'm going to do is we're going to now tension this. So the old floor cleaner is going to get the camera right in here. You can, this can be really awkward, even out the engine. You can see that little nipple there. What we're going to do is, you just hold the little nipple, yeah. So what I'm going to do is screw this bolt in here. I don't have to do it this way, but this is the way you're going to have to do it inside the car. Now, we're going to lever against the bolt and against the bottom of the tensioner, like I told you. This little nipple is going to move now in a second. Can you see that on camera? Can you see it? Can you see it?
Oh, it's the tensioner.
Yeah, can you see it moving? Can you see that?
Oh, yeah, it's moving.
Yeah. So that's moving now in the middle. Once it gets in the middle, I'm going to get 12 mil and just make sure, have I gone too far? Nope. And there we go. That is now tensioned. Oh, it's in the floor cleaner. Okay, floor cleaner, you can off your fuck. So now you can see that is directly in the middle there. The little nipple and the little pointer is directly in the middle. That is now tension. What we need to do is undo this bolt, turn the engine at least twice, at least 2 full revolutions, double check all our timing marks. Don't worry if these marks don't line up, because the belt, you might have to turn the belt I don't know how many times to get all them belt marks line up. What we're interested in is making sure our marks, the ones we have, line up, and when we turn the engine, nothing happens. It doesn't lock, it doesn't do anything weird. So that's what I'm going to do next. Right, so we've done all that. Now what we can do is we can turn the old engine. Drop my socket first before I turn the engine, just because, you know, why not? Shouldn't really, I'm too lazy to go and get one. So what I'm going to do now is turn it clockwise. What we're making sure is it doesn't lock up. If anything happens, if it slips now, if it does anything, no damage is going to be done, because I'm not going to be able to put enough pressure on this to bend the valves. If it locks up, okay, you have to take the belt off, turn everything back separately to your original marks and start again. No big deal. You're not going to do any harm here. It's frustrating and it takes time, but there's no harm done. If you put this back in the car, or if it's in the car already like it's going to be on yours, and then you try and start it straight away, that's when the harm is done. So we're going to turn it. We'll hit field compression, which we've got, which is a good thing. 16%. One turn, so I now know already that there is not an issue here, but I'm going to do it again just to be on the safe side. Our mark's still in the middle, so yeah, but you can see how now, look, we've got the bottom one lining up and we've got this one lining up, but not this one. So we have to go around. If that was a normal car with a twin cam engine and both pulleys were the same, all this would be lining up, but we're going to have to go around at least one more time to get all our marks to line up. maybe even 2 more times. Right. Bloody compression. This is going to be us lining up now, I think. Yep. So, again, like I said, forget about the lines on the belt, that's not important. The important thing is we haven't locked our engine. The bottom pulley lines up, the pump pulley lines up, and the cam lines up. Look at that, absolutely perfect. Our mark is still in the middle, so we're sorted. Boom! Ready to go. So there you go, it's that simple. I know I've got it out of the car, which makes it easier, but at least if it was in the car, I just wouldn't be able to show you as clear as what I can show you with it out of the car. And like I said, check out my other video to actually changing the engine and why we are doing it this way, why they're using other parts. I'm doing this for another garage. This is what they've asked me to do. But anyway, so as always, hope it helps. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Don't forget, links up here, links down below, but most important, don't forget, get your hands dirty. And what you also need is what I've now just got is a new floor cleaner. So we've got a new floor sweeper upper, which is handy, isn't it, floor sweeper upper?
Fucking mop the floor yet, mate.
Right, so definitely, I've taken out the wiring loom on this engine because it is definitely easier. Some cars it is, some cars it isn't. When I looked at this, at the beginning of the video, as you saw, I just didn't think it was. But it's just 3 10mm bolts that go in here. And then that separates the top of the fuse box, as you can see, with the bottom of the fuse box, which is there. And then that allows all the wires to come out, but we're only really interested in this section here, which is on the wiring loom, which I'll show you. Then there's one more pipe that comes along here, or one more wire that comes along here, and then there's one more that goes from the top of the fuse box into there. So you just disconnect all them. Right, this was the connection in the fuse box underneath the fuse box, which is important. So this one and this one is essentially controlling all the wiring loom in our engine. We do have this one, and the ECU wires are here as well, and obviously the heater controls for the plugs, but essentially it's all one unit, which is really handy. And some of these are just really awkward once it's in the car. Now it's out, you know, the likes of all this is so much easier to get all this in out of the car than it is in the car. It takes a few more minutes, but it saves you a good few hours putting it in the car. So this now is ready to go in as one lump. Gearbox, engine, wiring loom and everything. And then essentially to connect the wiring loom, all I've got to do is put that back, screw that back, 2 plugs for the ECU and a couple of more plugs just for the map sensor and stuff like that, and that's essentially it. Obviously I've got pipes to do, but I mean the wiring loom side of things is very simple after that. It'll only take a couple of seconds to plug it in rather than trying to put your hand down here and do the old reach around. It's so much bloody easier. Right, this is a prime example why you can never look at a timing belt from the top of an engine or when it's in, because if you look at that you think, oh look, that writing, you can see it perfectly. It can't be that old if the writing is that good. Now, also, it's years and mileage. People think because I haven't done the mileage, I don't need to change the belt, but you've got to remember these degrade over time as well. So even if you put a new belt in and you don't do any miles in 4 or 5 years, you have to replace the belt because it's going to be degraded. So you look at that, you think, oh, that's not too bad. I can see the writing, but when I turn it over and push it together, look at them cracks. Look at that. That's why you never can tell a timing belt from this. You always, unfortunately, have to take it off to test it properly. Even if you can see a big chunk of it down on the engine like that, you still can't test it properly. You need to squeeze it together like that to test it. Right, bit of a nightmare. There's 2 bolts at the back in between the gearbox and the engine. You can just kind of see where I've got a 1/4 inch ratchet. It's a T40 torque, so you can get in there, but you have to turn the flywheel. You can't see it because I can't get you in there, but turn the engine until there's 2 little slots in all. There's maybe 1 or 2, but it doesn't really matter, but there's a little slot in the flywheel that will allow you to get the tool inside. If you don't turn the flywheel, you're never going to get it in. So I don't know if there's 1 or 2 slots. I might have to move that slot that's here to the other side to do the other one. But that's how you do it. It is possible to do it without taking the gearbox off. Right, we've got the sump. I've taken everything off because when you clean the sump, so you clean all the edges off this, all the bits, even if you think you're getting them out, a lot of the bits are going inside. So take all the guards and everything off. It's only a couple of 10mm bolts. There's 4 10mm bolts on that. This is the most important part of any engine. It goes here, and it's vitally important on this one because especially here is where all the issues is. Where all the issues is with these engine is right here with the seal that's here, which we are going to replace. But this is the pickup, and on any engine, unless you start going to dry sumps, but that's a different video, the pickup here is very important because this is where the pump starts picking all the oil up, hence pickup. If this is blocked, or you've let all the bits of shit go in there, or you put too much sealer on and it's all gonna come to the bottom, it's gonna block up that, then you're gonna be in big trouble. So there's only 3 10mm bolts on that. So undo that, clean it out, brake clean. As you can see, I've still got a little bit to do with this, but it's very close. That goes there, that bolt's on there. And then I'll show you where the actual seal is on the engine. But vitally important, if you're going to do this, you might as well go the whole hog and just clean everything properly. Right, we have the engine. This is the seal for everyone along playing at home. That's what it looks like. That's the part number. And where it is right here. See? That's all it is. So simple. Now, these are... Let's get underneath here a bit better. So, this is what it looks like underneath. There are all the bolts. These are the 2 really hard bolts at the back, and this was the cutout I was talking about inside the flywheel. And we have 2 bolts going through the gearbox. So you have 1 bolt going this way, 1 bolt actually screwing into the sump, and 1 bolt screwing through the sump. And then we have all the bolts going around the outside. We have the dipstick there, but this is the important fella. All that hassle just for this. The engine seizing just because of this. Right, it's very simple to get out, and you might think what kind of goes wrong with them. They don't particularly split and like, you know, disintegrate, but I'll show you against the new one. They go really hard. See, that is quite hard, and what happens is, as it squeezes up against the pickup over a period of time, just like a gasket, you know, any kind of, you know, not a rubber gasket, but any kind of gasket, like paper gasket, essentially just crushes. And that's what happens with these. Yeah, so I'll show you against the new one, but yeah, they don't. So, you know, when you see yours and you think, oh, that looks okay, just because it's complete, that's not the problem. It goes all hard. Something's hard is good, but not gaskets. Right, I'll try and show you. So this, as you can see, it kind of sticks into the position I put it in. Can you see that? And you can see it's kind of flat, where the new one, now don't get me wrong, the new one will go flat as well, but you can see the new one, see the gap between the 2 flanges of the new one. Now once the sump comes on, this will push, but this is a lot more flexible. See that? So as I push down, instantly it springs back up. So once this is pushed down, the spring is going to keep pressure on the sump here where it needs to be. So it's going to keep the pressure on there like that, keeping that sealed. When they go old and they get hard, there's a little gap that comes, and the oil, well, the oil just can't suck up. It just kind of, it comes up to here and it just leaks out. So like I said, if you see your gasket, you're doing anything, you say, oh, that looks fine, there's no point changing it. I'm telling you, it's one of these things you have to change. inside 100,000 miles. They seem to fail around 100,000 miles. Personally, I'd be doing it maybe around 60, 70,000 miles just to be on the safe side, because you know you don't want it. It's an expensive job because there's a lot of work to do it, but it's a lot cheaper than replacing your engine. All right, hopefully you can see. Oh, very simple putting in. Just clean it up. You can use the little thing that came with it. It kind of just more or less pushes in by hand, to be honest. You don't need anything. You just need to make sure it's got it all the way, which it has. And then you just want to double. Yep, and there we go. So, very, very easy to put in. There's nothing to it. You just want to take that off because you don't want to leave that on. Not that the sump will go on with that on. You'll find there'll be a big gap. But yeah, it really is as simple as that. And that little thing causes all the problems. So I'm now ready. I've cleaned all the sump. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sealer on the sump, or on the engine, sorry, because you put it on the sump, especially with the way I'm doing it, you can hit the sump off. So when I'm trying to put it on here, I can hit the sump off the pulley and take half the seal away, where if it's on here I can't. Once I put the sump on, the seal is on here. It just makes more sense, because when you put it on the sump in this situation, you can easily knock it off, or you know, catch it here and catch it places you won't necessarily see it, and then you're going to have a leaky sump, and no one wants a leaky sump. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Right, so this is what you need to take off to take the sump. So you need to take off this carrier first, which is 360 mils, which actually holds the drive shaft in. Then on one side, on the DPF side, you got these few bolts. This is 2 for the DPF filter, and these are the rest for the sump. This is the really these 2 are the really awkward 2. We'll get them in a second. So we got T40s, or T50s, sorry, and T30s. Now these 2 are the awkward 2. These are 2 T30s. They're a nightmare. This is the 2 going through the sump, going to the gearbox. They're E14 inverted torques. Then we've got the rest on the other side. For the sump, again, they're the same E50s and E30. And this is the 10 mil for the return, for the oil return. That's it really. Simple enough once the engine is out, but when the engine is in, bloody nightmare. Sorry, my mistake. I meant E40s and E50s. Right, I have the engine sitting, well it's not sitting in, it's just kind of rested in. There's no mounts or anything. The reason why I went at such a deep, shallow angle, deep, shallow, doesn't make sense, at such a huge angle is to clear the ABS pump and all that first, to get the gearbox in before the engine came out. And I knew because I had the engine level, afterwards I could more or less straighten it up. So it was just to clear all this because this is kind of in the way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do it off camera because you're not going to be able to see. I'm just going to put the gearbox mount on and the engine mount on. At least then it's physically sitting in place. And now I've done it this way, it's going to be so much easier just to hook all the wiring and everything up. So much easier. So let me get the mounts on and then we can remove this. Okay, engine is in, sitting on the engine mount and the gearbox mount. The pendulum mounts still aren't connected, so it can pendulum. But anyway, it allows me to do everything on the top now. Put all the water pipes in, put the battery back on, put the ECU back on, all the wires, all the earths, because there's a couple of earth straps. But what I got to do first is plug in the clutch and plug in the gear linkages. Because once I start putting stuff on, I'm going to kind of hide that. But I've also got to make sure I've got enough room to bleed the clutch. So I might have to bleed the clutch fairly soon before I put too much on. Because otherwise I'll have to take stuff off to bleed the clutch, which is bloody annoying. So again, do a few bits off camera because you're not going to be able to see. Just going to put the gear linkages on and the clutch on. Right, you can see I've more or less got all this back together, all the fuse box, all the wires. Just got to put the ECU and the battery in, but just putting the ABS pump back on, put the power steering line back in. But there's a few bits now I have to do which you're just not going to be able to see. This is the pump for the brakes, or the vacuum pump. A few things I just physically can't film because I'm going to get in the way of it. Once I got that done, I'll turn the camera back on. I forgot to mention that it's only been a few seconds for you, but nearly 4 weeks for me putting this back together. I haven't, this is the first time within 4 weeks that I've got back to this thing. So, yeah. Taking the clip off this now anyway. You can get to this rather than moving all the pipes a little bit easier. Yeah. It's gonna be a few water pipes, the heater matrix pipes, if you can see them. Can you see them? Yeah, heater matrix pipes, some water pipes. Let me get them in, because again you're not gonna be able to see what I'm doing, and then we can go to the bottom and start putting engine mounts in. Right, I've got the bonnet on. You thought I forgot the 3 little bolts that hold on the intake, didn't you? Well, I did. But this is why you go over everything and you check and you see. Got the heater matrix pipes on, got the airbox on. There's a few extra clips on the airbox wires. Got all the turbo pipes on, all the boost pipes. Everything, I think, essentially, apart from the battery at the top. Just a couple more little clips to go in there, but that's essentially it. I think everything now, I believe, is from the bottom. So drive shafts, gearbox oil, coolant, engine oil, you know, that kind of stuff, I believe. And then we need to start this bad boy. Right, I've got my engine mount on. I'm missing a little bolt from there, which I'm gonna put in. I've got my rear engine mount on. I've managed to get my other boost pipe on. I've got this drive shaft on. I've put oil in it. I've put power steering oil in it. I haven't put any cooling in it yet. And I've put gearbox oil in it. Now, lucky enough, I measured how much gearbox oil came out. It was about 1.8, 1.9 litres. And because the fill plug, this is the drain plug here, and the fill plug is in a really stupid place. So lucky enough, I've measured how much I took out, and I was able to squirt it into there without it coming back out. So in other words, normally when you take the drive shaft out, loads of oil comes out because the oil level is higher, the oil level is higher than the drive shaft hole. But in this case, it wasn't. So it was really handy. This is the drain, or this is the fill plug. It's right on top of the engine. And of course, I've put everything back here, and you can't really get to that very easy. So lucky enough, squirting it in this hole here where the drive shaft goes is bloody good. I've looked everywhere on this and I cannot see cannot see anything that even remarkably exambles, that's the word, the fill plug or even the level plug. So anyway, it doesn't matter. We got away with it because I measured how much came out. What I'm going to do is just put the other drive shaft on. Again, I'm not going to be able to film it because you're not going to be able to see anything. We can essentially start this and see what it sounds like. Does it start? Have I forgotten something? You know, all these things could have happened. Is there an issue with the timing? Again, it's another possibility. There's just loads of possibilities. We won't know until we try and start it. Okay, I've just put the battery on. I haven't tightened this one. I always like, especially when I've done something like this, to kind of keep one connection a little bit loose just in case you have to put it off quickly for whatever reason. Now, with this being a big diesel, this might not start with this not being properly on. The battery could even be a bit low. I don't know. I haven't got coolant yet. I'm still waiting on coolant, so I'm not going to start this for long. I just want to see if it basically starts. I've wedged the clutch pedal down because you have to press the stupid clutch pedal for these to start. I don't know why they keep doing this now. They didn't do this years ago. First thing I want to do is just turn it on and see anything weird happens. All the lights have gone off. It's not going to start because it's going to be air locked. Just see. Just letting the, I'm turning it and I can hear the pump bubbling away. So I'll do that a few more times. Just a couple more times. Right, we are going to attempt to start this now, and hopefully nothing blows up. Oh, I'm going to have to put the jump pack on. Right, I've tightened the connection, I put my jump pack on, but my jump pack is nearly dead. So I don't know if even my jump pack's going to start this. Well, it started easy, so I know the timing is okay. I just want to check all the levels first and just recheck the oil and just check no leaks underneath. Right, just let me do a few little checks before I start it again. Then we'll start it again and let it run for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, which would be no problem when there's no water in it. And I need to bleed the power steering as well. Right, it all looks good so far. It's charging the battery, so we kind of know the wiring is somewhat okay. There's no engine lights on, so we can kind of guess that the wiring is okay, because sometimes, you know, something could have got missed, especially when I took the fuse box out. Some of the connections could have got bent over, or, you know, there's loads of things that can happen, but we seem to be okay at the minute. I just need to get some coolant in here before I can kind of test it properly. But looking good so far. Right, these are a pain in the arse to bleed. You'll know once you've got it bled, because you'll see the fluid coming through there. You can see it's now circulating, and this will get really hot. The bleed nipple is right down there. I'll show you on the other engine. But we've got hot air coming inside now. Still got no engine lights and lovely hot air. Right, so this is the bleed nipple. Get a little screwdriver, screw it off. There's a pipe just here with the radiator. You can keep squeezing that pipe, which will force the air bubbles out. You'll see steam coming out here. It kind of overheating. You can stop it, start it, stop it, start it. But then all of a sudden you'll see in the expansion bottle, you'll see it circulating. You'll see this kind of spitting out, and then it kind of stops, and you think, well, I need to have you know, water coming out of here to know you're fine. When you turn the engine off, it then pisses out, but the fucking water is so hot you struggle to put this back on. Just a bit of a nightmare. You can kind of half take it off, but you can't really see what's going on if you half take it off, so I just tend to take it off fully, but it causes issues no matter which way you do it. Right, first drive. Does it go into gear? Does it go forward? I mean, we know kind of the engine's good. Now it's just gone into gear, but does it go forward? Oh yeah, there we go. And reverse, because sometimes you can always get forward gears but not reverse, and we're going in reverse. Good stuff. I'm going to take this for a drive now and make sure everything's okay before we call it good. Well, I'm actually going to take it with me this evening and then check it over in the morning just to make sure everything's good. Right, we are all good. It's all behaving itself. It's going through every single gear. It's not making any funny noises. It's not leaking. It's not doing anything it shouldn't do. Acceleration is all good. Absolutely perfect. Now, if you see any more after this, you know I had an issue, but if not, you know this was all good. I'm going to check all the fluids in the morning, make sure, you know, because you sometimes would have to top up maybe the coolant or something like that. Make sure there's no leaks, make sure everything's clipped into place, nothing's rubbing, nothing's doing anything like that. But I'm going to check all that off camera. If I have an issue, I will film it, but if not, it's good to go. So as always, hope it helps. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Don't forget, links up here, links down below, but most important, don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one. Sorted.